Hi, Brian Lehrer here. Up next, Brian Lehrer Weekend. 3 of our favorite segments from the week packaged together for you to listen to on the weekend. So enjoy, and I'll see you back on the radio Monday at 10 a.m. on WNYC and WNYC.org. Brian Lehrer on WNYC. Mayor Mamdani joins us now. We have 15 minutes with him today. There are things I want to bring up. I know there's some news that he's breaking this morning, including his endorsement in the Democratic primary for governor. Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming on today, the first time since the inauguration. So rather than Assemblyman Mamdani, as I've called you in the past, it's the first time I say, Mr. Mayor, welcome back to WNYC.
It is a real pleasure to be back, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
I said this to the new controller in his first appearance, Mark Levine, and I'll say it to you. You think you're running for a job like mayor for lofty goals like universal child care and equal justice under the law, and then you realize you have to take out the garbage and clean up the snow. And yes, you will be judged by that. So how does it feel to be suddenly the executive for the first time with the realities of running this complicated city?
Well, I think it's only right to be judged on what you do on a daily basis. And I think what we see time and again is that New Yorkers care far less about how you describe your politics and far more about whether your politics actually includes them and their struggles. And as it comes to the snow, just to give you an update, what we are looking at is some of the coldest weather we've seen in recorded history in New York City. And where typically snowfall would be followed by an increase in temperatures and the assistance of the sun in melting that snow, what we've instead seen is a cold front, the likes of which we have not seen in many years. And so the hardworking men and women of DSNY have been doing everything that they can. And what they've done thus far is melt more than 200 million pounds of snow, lay out more than 230 million pounds of salt. And in doing so, they have split their shifts between snow removal and response and garbage and recycling collection. And now that's back on its scheduled day that we have here in New York City.
Well, about the cold, 17 deaths is the last number I saw, most from hypothermia, which means literally dying of cold. And you're getting criticized from the right and from some civic groups like the Partnership for New York City Business Lobby for your policy of no longer sweeping homeless encampments. But I saw you quoted saying you're continuing the Adams policy of involuntary removal of people unable to care for themselves. So do I have that part right? No change on the standards you are using to determine when involuntary removal is warranted in the person's interest?
Yes, that is correct. And just to be clear to New Yorkers, that's when there's been a clinical determination that a New Yorker is a danger either to themselves or to those around them. And the city has, over the course of the time since we've put our city into a code blue, which was on January 19th, we have made 20 involuntary transfers. And this is only one part of what we are doing to do everything in our power to reach out directly to homeless New Yorkers to bring them inside. So thus far, outreach workers have made over 1,100 placements to transitional housing, safe havens, shelters, and with a cold front coming once again this weekend, the focus continues to be everything we can do to get them off the streets and get them inside. And so in addition to the outreach workers, it's also ensuring that we are building on the 20 mobile warming units that we have with resources, clinicians, and connections that folks can have to shelter, the 15 warming vehicles, the 15 warming spaces, the addition of 50 SRO-style shelter units in Upper Manhattan, as well as the expedited opening just yesterday of a 106-bed safe haven shelter in Lower Manhattan. And I say all this to say, Brian, that I went out one evening with some of our outreach workers, and they are doing such difficult and important work at all hours of the day to reach out to New Yorkers, homeless New Yorkers, and try to get them inside. And for many homeless New Yorkers, their prior experiences with the shelter system, their prior experiences with the services they've been provided are also what color their decision-making of whether or not they should be inside or outside. And so we don't want to go to them and say, there's only one option you have, take it or leave it. Our goal is to go to these homeless New Yorkers and say, here are the many different ways that you could come indoors, be warm, be safe, and ensure that we are actually meeting that moment and meeting their needs.
On the Lower Manhattan shelter, which I think is the one that you've described as having fewer restrictions than typical at a shelter. What does fewer restrictions mean? And I have to tell you, there seems to be a concerted campaign to get me to ask you a version of this question. A lot of people have written in. I'll read you one that's representative of the group. Regarding the low barrier shelter on Pearl Street, please highlight that this is attached to an elementary school and ask Mamdani, does it make sense to put hundreds of children at risk? And like I say, there's, kind of an organized campaign. We're getting a lot of texts and phone calls to that effect. So reply to that group and also talk about less restrictive shelters.
So the point when I speak about less restrictive shelters is a lower barrier to ensure that too often if a homeless New Yorker is looking to find shelter, they will have to then go through an intake process. They will have to then go through a process that is more drawn out and more likely that someone will actually not be able to get shelter in that immediate moment. And in this level of cold, what we are doing is to ensure that we are expediting all of these processes to bring people inside. And this safe haven shelter that I toured in Lower Manhattan, it is one that I know that there was a lawsuit that was a part of this. The city ended up prevailing in the lawsuit about establishing this safe haven shelter and is taking every precaution necessary to ensure that safety, like is always the case, is a critical part of what we are delivering. And that includes things such as the installation of privacy screening material in all interior windows facing the adjacent school. That includes the procedures that Breaking Ground, which is the organization that is running the safe haven, are instituting here. And all of it is to both be responsive to the concerns of the community around them, but also responsive to a crisis of cold weather, the likes of which we have not seen in the city in a long time, and the likes of which need to be responded to by the utilization of every possible resource.
Mr. Mayor, I think you've heard that our reporter Liz Kim found warming buses deployed by the city near the Staten Island ferry that were empty because nobody knew they were there. You've talked about there being an all-of-government approach in this homeless outreach in the cold, but apparently the NYPD, Transportation Department, and ferry officials all had no idea the city sent warming buses to a well-known homeless hub. Who's responsible for that communications failure?
I think at the end of the day, that is a responsibility that I have as the mayor of the city. It's never a moment to pass the buck to anyone else. And what we are doing is ensuring that the focus of our work, which is outreach workers directly reaching out to homeless New Yorkers to bring them to those warming buses, is supplemented by clear and additional signage to those buses to ensure that everyone understands that they are there. That is critical, and those are some of the changes that we're making.
We'll change topics now. Here's one of the things I know you want to announce. Pre-K and 3K applications are due at the end of this month, and you want to get the word out. Are these central education and child care programs under-enrolled?
No, this is just an opportunity to tell New Yorkers about the fact that it is their right to enroll their child, whether they're turning 3 or 4 years old this year, into 3K and pre-K. And we actually recently celebrated 50,000 signups from New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. New Yorkers and families listening right now, you have until February 27th. And for those of you who might be anxious about you haven't already applied, it is not a first come, first serve basis. If you apply anytime before the 27th, your application will be treated the same. And you can do so by visiting myschools.nyc. You could call 718-935-2009, or you could visit one of the city's more than 10 family welcome centers. And so what this all is making the case to New Yorkers about is the way in which city government can address what is one of the most expensive parts of living in the city, which is to raise a family. We know that it is a sad reality that in New York City, it's considered a good deal if you can get childcare for one child for the course of a year for about $23,000. It's time to make it that little bit easier to raise that family here and not have to choose between the city you love and the family you want to raise.
Are you doing anything more aggressively than the Adams administration did on 3K and pre-K outreach? They got criticized for doing less outreach than under de Blasio.
Well, I'm here on Brian Lehrer, and we're looking to be on everywhere, frankly, to make the case directly to New Yorkers. And I think part of this is you got to be on the radio, you got to be on television, you have to be using digital media. You also have the opportunities of visiting childcare centers yourself. I think that I may be the first mayor to have visited a home-based center, and home-based centers are a critical part of our childcare infrastructure. They provide the kind of linguistic and cultural flexibility that meets the needs of, as Mayor Dinkins would say, the gorgeous mosaic of our city. And it is up to me to make sure that we're making the case in every possible way. That even includes our Link NYC terminals across the 5 boroughs.
Another announcement that you have, I see you've just announced your appointee to lead the mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism. It's Felissa Wisdom, executive director of New York Jewish Agenda, generally described as a progressive Jewish group. This comes a day after the NYPD reported a big spike in all hate crimes, but led by anti-Jewish hate crimes over the last year. So why Felissa Wisdom, and do UNC have plans yet on how to reverse the trend and any differently from under the Adams administration?
I've had the pleasure of working with Felissa prior to this moment as the mayor of our city, and I've always been impressed and truly appreciated the sincerity and the depth of her commitment to combating anti-Semitism. And as you've said, we saw in the prior month 31 anti-Semitic hate crimes here in our city. And any single anti-Semitic hate crime is an anti-Semitic hate crime too many in this city. We are seeing the need to not just sustain the mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism, but to strengthen it. And the appointment of Felissa is one that is critical in doing so, because it won't just ensure that there is close coordination with the NYPD's hate crimes task force and community leaders and city agency to respond to these hate crimes, but frankly, it will also do the work to ensure that we prevent these hate crimes. And the work that she has done with the New York Jewish Agenda, the work that she has done in making sure that this is a city where Jewish New Yorkers can live free of violence, intimidation, and harassment, that is the kind of work that we need to build on here in city government. And I'm frankly so excited by her appointment and the work that she will do.
I gather you and Ms. Wisdom have differences on at least 2 issues. I read that she does support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, and I gather you've promised more of a hands-off approach to how yeshivas are regulated than she would like to see. She'd like to see more regulation regarding secular education standards on Jewish state. That's a point of contention, of course, on how anti-Semitism is defined. Will that difference inform how you fight hate and actual hate crimes?
No, the differences of opinion that we may have on the question of Israel and Palestine are not an impact on the importance and the urgency with which we treat the fight against anti-Semitism here in New York City. And I need not have every appointee align with every single view that I hold. What I need them to have, however, is a dedication and a commitment to the job that they're being hired for. And I can tell you that what I have heard from far too many Jewish New Yorkers is that this crisis of anti-Semitism is one that is too often thought about after the fact and not enough in advance of it. And what I'm most excited about with Felissa, with her leadership and the office that she will be leading, is building out a team which will be tasked with ensuring that we have a city where every Jewish New Yorker is not only able to live, work, and worship, but also thrive without fear of violence or harassment or intimidation, because it is unacceptable. And this is a moment where we have to meet that challenge, and she is just the person to do so.
Last thing, the breaking news this morning, you published your endorsement for governor in a column in The Nation, and it is, drumroll, Governor Hochul, rather than her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, who is primarying her from the left and has prominent Democratic Socialist India Walton as his running mate. Why Governor Hochul? And what do you say to those of the people in the movement to elect you who are now out there on the other side of that primary?
On day 8 of our administration, Ryan, I stood with Governor Hochul on stage in our city to announce more than $1 billion in funding from the state to deliver universal childcare. And as I was sharing with you earlier, this is the kind of cost that pushes working families out of the city. And that was a commitment that not only fixes the childcare we provide for 3-year-olds to ensure that it can meet the demand of every 3-year-old, but also delivers for the first time in New York City history, childcare for every 2-year-old. And as Governor Hochul was on that stage, she said that the era of empty promises is over. And to me, what that is an indication of is exactly what New Yorkers want to see. They want to see a government that can deliver real material improvements in their lives. And you can already see the results of the partnership between the two of us in that historic agreement on childcare and in the potential of a new relationship between City Hall and Albany that is characterized more by productivity as opposed to the pettiness that has often been the case. And I am proud to support her reelection. And in this moment, this is a governor who has chosen to govern with the needs of working people in mind. And that is exactly what we have to deliver in what has now become the most expensive city in the United States of America.
I know you got to go. Any quick thing you want to say to India Walton, who was kind of the you of the mayor's race in Buffalo?
Well, I have nothing but respect for India, and I think that there's the ability to both appreciate one's work and be on the other side of a race.
All right. I know we're out of time. Thanks for this, and I look forward to full-fledged Ask the Mayor segments, which I know you're going to do going forward. Thank you, and good luck as you continue to hit the ground running, as certainly you've had to do.
Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Good morning again, everyone. So some of you of a certain age and may remember, and many others of you may have read about, the infamous subway shooting of 1984. A man named Bernhard Goetz gunned down 4 black teenagers on the number 2 train. And, of course, the media ran wild with the story. It was, of course, a real story. The New York Post and the Daily News published hundreds of pieces with sensational headlines, framing the teens as hardened criminals and Goetz as a sort of vigilante hero. It was an era-defining incident in the Koch 80s, the Reagan 80s, a time when crime and poverty were running rampant in the city, certainly compared to now, despite the fact that the shootings appeared to be basically unprovoked. To critics of Goetz, prevailing public opinion pretty quickly sided with him and celebrated the shootings as an act of bravery or at least self-defense from a mugging. Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Heather Ann Thompson recently published a book that details the shooting and its political backdrop. The book offers a rich narrative account of the incident and how the public's reaction to it offers crucial insight into the kind of racial resentment that politicians have been capitalizing on before, certainly, but also maybe in a different way ever since. It's also about the fallout of Reaganomics, the rise of conservative media in the city and maybe the country, the weaponization of fear that has come to define a big part of American politics. I'll also note that it's a page-turner. She dives into the lives of the victims, whose names are Darrell Cabey, Barry Allen, Troy Canty, and James Ramsour. And I mention their names because they are far less famous than Bernhard Goetz himself. And through their stories, she lays out a deep political and social history of the late 20th century. Remember, Heather Ann Thompson is a historian, and how it set the stage to some degree for the kind of white rage that dominates Trump-era politics right now. The book is called Fear and Fury, The Reagan 80s, the Bernie Goetz shootings, and the rebirth of white rage. Heather Ann Thompson is here with us now to talk about the book, and we'll also open up the phones, especially for some of you who may remember the Bernhard Goetz shooting. Heather, welcome back to WNYC. Thank you for coming on today.
So glad to be here.
Why this story at this time?
Oh, well, I think it's in part because this story has so much resonance to where we are today, feeling a lot like cities are in crisis and feeling like the response to it that is too often encouraged is an unleashing of violence and rage on the ground against the people who are actually suffering it the worst. And I felt like this was a moment that we needed to go back to kind of lay the groundwork to better understand where we are now.
Can you start by doing a short version of what actually happened on that train that day, the incident itself?
Sure. So this is 3 days before Christmas in 1984. And four teenagers, as you mentioned, from the South Bronx decide they're going to get on this train to go into Manhattan with the intention of going to a video arcade to jimmy open the coin receptacles to get a few quarters. And that act itself was very common, particularly for teenagers in this period, because the economy was in very, very bad shape. Jobs had dried up, educational opportunities had dried up, and so teenagers were scrapping around to get money any way they could. So they're on the train on their way to do that. Meanwhile, another guy, a white loner by the name of Bernie Goetz, gets on the same train at the 14th Street station, and he has his own history that he's bringing to this, which is also a response to the city that is in serious trouble. He is angry at the trash piling up. He is angry at the decimation of social services, but he doesn't understand the origin of why these things are the case. He sees these as just the result of crime and dependency and black teens like the four that he now sits right across from. And one of the teenagers asks him for $5, in part because he wants to have a little cash when they go into this arcade to make it at least somewhat reasonable why they would be in there. And it appears that he's going to give him the money, but he stands up, turns, and immediately swings back around, having reached in a hidden holster with a .38 Smith & Wesson, assumes a combat position, and shoots the one kid who has talked to him in the chest, the one behind him in the back as he's trying to run away. And there's two more friends a little slightly down in the car, one at whom he shoots through the arm and into his lungs. And he shoots the fourth, but he misses. And then stunningly to eyewitnesses, he walks over there, looks at this kid who's now kind of cowering on the subway seat and says, "You look okay. Here is another." And he shoots him point blank range, severing his spinal cord. That is the beginning of what will become a story that goes over decades, really. And I think not only just changes New York, but really sends a message to America about the re-legitimization and legal sanctioning of that kind of act.
Did Goetz have reason to believe that he was in the act of being mugged or about to be mugged, not just being asked for money? There was something, I think, in the narrative from Goetz's point of view that there was a weapon.
Well, so actually, this is such a great question because he will go on the lam. He turns himself in 9 days later and then gives this extraordinary 2-hour videotaped confession in which he makes clear, as he put it, robbery had nothing to do with it, makes clear that even an earlier mugging that he had experienced several years earlier had nothing to do with it when he was asked, but that he didn't like the gleam in this one kid's eyes. And then he goes on this rant about essentially the decline of the city and the coddling of would-be criminals like these teenagers. So he didn't feel that he had any weapons directed towards him. In fact, that will become one of the biggest mistruths about this case, as meanwhile these victims are being villainized and weirdly also simultaneously erased from the story.
Did any or all of the victims survive?
So they all survived the shooting, although their lives were permanently marked thereafter, traumatized. In fact, only 2 of them still are living today. And the one most injured, they're all taken to local emergency rooms into ICUs with very severe injuries. But the most severely injured was Daryl Caby, the one who was shot deliberately the second time. And he was not only paralyzed permanently thereafter, was never able to walk again, but then suffered a coma and became also suffered brain damage.
Did Bernhard Goetz get charged and stand trial?
Well, so that too became part of the really extraordinary thing about this case at the time, which is that it was very difficult to bring him trial. One grand jury convenes and only wants to ultimately indict him on carrying an illegal weapons charge. And then the confession comes out. And so the DA goes back to it and does convene a second grand jury that will indict him on much more serious charges, including attempted murder. And thus begins one of the most traumatic trials, I think, in New York history. He hires Barry Slotnick, who many people might remember as having also defended, the likes of John Gotti, a very flashy, really brilliant lawyer. And thus a show, a pure theater kind of begins. And ultimately the jury, despite seeing the wreckage of this violence, despite the confession, despite all of this, ultimately does not find him guilty of anything worse than, again, the carrying of these illegal weapons, the owner.
Why do you think the jury came to that conclusion?
Well, that's one of the things that I had to really struggle with and try to figure out as a historian. You're looking at every piece of paper, every scrap of everything, and you're pulling it all back together again. And I have to say, it was really quite inexplicable, given the evidence that was presented. They are essentially being told that, as many Americans feel they are being told today, that up is down and down is up. What they're seeing with their own eyes didn't really happen. And, they clearly want to believe it. I mean, for starters, half of the jury picked had themselves been victims of crime in New York, including on subways. So it was mystifying and yet all too familiar at the same time.
Does it mean the jury basically bought the premise that they were going to mug him? I asked you that question before, about whether they were going to mug him or flashed a weapon or anything, and you cited Goetz's own testimony, or not testimony in court, but the interview that he gave after the incident, where he said, no, this had nothing to do with crime. But, we're getting texts like this one. The teenager, quote, asks him for cash. Let's be honest, they wanted to rob him. I'm not saying Goetz shooting these kids was justified, but they looked at him as a mark and wanted to mug him. So people who remember it, a lot of people who remember it, have that impression. Maybe the jury did.
Oh, I think absolutely. And I think it requires just taking just a pause to remember that one of the reasons why this is the story that now everyone feels that they know and has come down to us is that at the time, even before the New York Post and the New York Daily News knew who this guy was, they were already celebrating him as the death wish vigilante, the hero that the city needed. And we're already publishing stories that, for example, these teenagers were carrying sharpened screwdrivers, that they were armed, that they were threatening him. Of course, none of this proves true, but those stories and that storytelling has an incalculable impact on the way people understand the story. And of course, it feels like that is exactly what would happen to certain white folks, particularly feeling like they're already nervous and scared about black teenagers. So this is a racial narrative that is stoked, it's curated. And so we fast forward to today and we hear that Troy Canty asks Bernie Goetz for $5. And I say ask because he says, do you have $5? No other subway passenger in that car felt threatened by him. At no point did someone get off or report anything to the conductor, which, by the way, often happened when people felt that there was something untoward about ready to happen. And Bernie Goetz himself does not get off. This all happens within 5 minutes of him getting on this train. So it really, when you read this, I really encourage folks to read this trial and the transcript and see the story as it actually happened. It is an extraordinary moment where we want to believe. I think the jury wanted to find him innocent, and the nation wanted to celebrate him.
My guest is historian Heather Ann Thompson. Her new book is called Fear and Fury, The Reagan 80s, the Bernie Goetz Shootings, and the Rebirth of White Rage. We are getting some phone calls as well as texts from people who remember the incident. We'll take some of your calls next. 212-433, WNYC, 212-433-9692. Mike in Manhattan, you're on WNYC. Hello.
Hello, Brian. Yes, I remember that. I'm 81 years old, and I remember this incident. And what I recall about these kids being presented as like almost innocent, there was a live interview with the lawyer of these kids with the kids present, live TV interview. And they actually had to protect the lawyer from one of these kids who was going to attack his own lawyer. These were not nice kids. And I have no doubt they were going to mug this guy Bernie Goetz. So, this presentation is really offensive to me, because to hear this, you think these are innocent kids. They're not innocent kids. So that's all I have to say.
Did they deserve to be shot?
No, I agree with you. They probably didn't deserve to be shot, especially the kid who was sitting by himself, apparently. So I mean, Bernie. But when you're feeling threatened, your adrenaline runs. You're not thinking calmly anymore, especially if there's 4 kids and you're by yourself. Mike,
thank you for your call. Heather, your reaction to that, including the incident he describes. I don't know if it's accurate about one of the victims and the lawyer.
No, I mean, and I think, it isn't that I don't understand this sentiment about the case. Again, the media at the time was reveling in any opportunity to portray them not just as potentially threatening Bernie Goetz, but as one judge put it, animal, dangerous criminal. The facts were on the ground, and even if they are uncomfortable facts, that these were teenagers that had, in fact, racked up a host of misdemeanor citations prior to this event. So things like jumping turnstiles in the subway, having no money, jimmying opening these coin receptacles. These were not teenagers with violent criminal records. And in fact, one of the reasons why New Yorkers come to this impression is that right when they are in the ICUs, they're recovering from these injuries, 2 Bronx judges suddenly look at all of these misdemeanor citations that they had not come into court for. And again, why? Because when you come in on a misdemeanor citation, you have to pay a fine, and issues this blizzard of warrants against them, and warrants for their arrest. So the front page headlines is criminal all criminal teenagers, teenagers fleeing the law, and so forth. But meanwhile, let's be really clear. Bernie Goetz was the one carrying illegal weapons. Not only that, he had pulled that illegal weapon on people numerous times before. And when he was arrested, he had, for example, marijuana in his apartment in his possession at a time when not only is this illegal, but plenty of people are being arrested and given major stints of time. So the question in this case about who's the criminal and who's the victim gets really, really complicated. But here's what I will say to your caller that I absolutely think is worth pulling out here. In the New York 80s. It is a terrible time where people are all feeling a measure of threat. All people are feeling very unsettled by the really decline of city services, the graffiti, the trash, the sense of danger at every turn. And what is to me so interesting about this moment for today is that nobody was really stopping to ask, why are things deteriorating on the ground, and then turn on one another rather than ask these more structural questions.
Another caller, Francesca in the Bronx. You're on WNYC. Hello, Francesca.
Hi. I was a teenager when this happened, and I remember this very close. Kids were my age. And they weren't doing anything, their records weren't anything particularly shocking. We were all sort of a lot of unsupervised kids in those days. This wasn't anything crazy up to. I remember, them painting. I remember the media painting these boys as being animals and monsters, which was, really in fashion in those days. It was really in fashion. Anytime anything happened, it was really exciting to demonize the black people in the situation and then paint the white people as innocent victims. This happens numerous times in the media. But I remember watching a piece of that confession video or whatever they called that. I saw a piece of it as a kid. And I remember looking at it and thinking, you got to be kidding me. This guy, he's telling us himself. He kind of lost his temper. He lost control of himself. He kind of was seeing red, and he wanted to attack them. Like, he described that himself in his own words, and I was like, why are the adults, like, what is wrong with the adults not grasping what this man is saying? As a teenager, it seemed really, really plain and clear to me, and I don't know, I was very upset at the time about what I was watching.
Thank you very much for your call. And you could tell from even the two calls that we took, and we're not going to have time to take more, but, you look at the board, and people who remember the incident are still polarized over it. Tell me about your decision not to interview Goetz himself for this book. He is still alive, living in the city, I gather, and giving interviews. He's even built a name for himself, I read, as a conservative political pundit. Did you make a conscious decision not to get his side of the story?
Ultimately, I did, and that is for two reasons. One, I am a historian, so to me, it's really, really important to just go back to the beginning and actually look at what everybody was saying at the time and what every piece of press coverage was at the time. And, I was digging into crime victims files and probation reports. I mean, you name the piece of paper, that's what I was basing this information on. But I was also in the beginning tempted to try, which I don't normally do, but to talk to both Goetz and the victims. And, tried to initially reach out to that end. And then I thought, you know what? I actually don't want to talk to Bernie Goetz. And the reason is because he would be yet again able to tell the story, in sort of retrospect, the present day version of the story. But I wasn't going to be able to interview all of the victims. I wasn't going to be able to give them the same time. Two of them were dead. One of them killed himself. It very likely appears on the anniversary of this horrific event. Another one had a drug addiction problem, ended up dying later on after a prison term. One of them was managed to go on and make a life for himself and is so traumatized by coverage doesn't want to talk. But the main person I talk about in this book is unable to really give interviews because of the wreckage of this violence. So I decided not to, but his own words, as your previous caller said, were just so extraordinary. I mean, he doesn't just say that, I didn't like the gleam in this guy's eyes. He said, if I would have had more bullets, I would have murdered them all. He said that he would have tried to gouge one of their eyes out, but then realized that it was unnecessary at that point. This is a level of rage, and it's something that I'm inviting, I think, people to obviously, react to, have their opinions to, but I really invite them to the book, Fear and Fury, to kind of, read it from the beginning and take ourselves back to the 80s. And I think the resonance with today will feel both chilling, but it's also illuminating because I think it's a cautionary tale. Both why not to unleash this kind of rage and legally vindicate it, but also for us to really be leery of being told that what our eyes have just seen didn't happen and be leery of stereotypical explanations for what we think we saw.
So how, in our last few minutes, do you think it resonates with today? I know you mentioned Daniel Penny, who listeners will remember strangled a black man on the subway in 2023 in a situation where he and writers thought they were under threat, though the man, Jordan Neely, hadn't done anything to anyone at that point. And you relate it to Trump as well.
Yeah, and also to, the Kyle Rittenhouse case and to the kind of unleashing of fury and rage in January 6th. And there's so many incidents that follow this that aren't just examples of people feeling it's okay to take the law in their own hands and to explode, but that the courts side with it and that they think it's okay. That this is very noticeable that after the Bernie Goetz case, the NRA not only supports his legal defense, but, makes incredible inroads in selling guns as something we all need for public, our own personal safety, not just for sportsmanship or for hunting. So this is a turning point, I think. But for today, I think it reminds us of two really, really important things. And you had the mayor on earlier, so I was actually really thinking about this, that if we're really, really serious about public safety, we have to really think about the structural things that make people so fearful, make them feel unsafe, and incite that kind of rage and resentment, particularly racialized rage. And then we have to trust that just because, we are told that something, happened that didn't, that to be really skeptical of it. So Minneapolis comes to mind, the recent murders in Minneapolis, when from the White House on down, we are told that no, in fact, this was a domestic terrorist that got shot. In fact, this was someone that was, wielding a weapon. When our eyes are telling us something quite different. So people are now invested in a rage narrative that is very dangerous to our society. And I think the 80s is a turning point moment that we can kind of revisit and rethink where we are today.
Historian, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Heather Ann Thompson. Her new book is Fear and Fury, The Reagan 80s, the Bernie Goetz shootings, and the rebirth of white rage. And if you're interested in seeing her in person, she'll be speaking about the book at the 92nd Street Y with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Andrea Elliott. That's next Thursday, February 12th. Ticketed event, tickets at 92y.org. She'll also be speaking at the Roosevelt House on March 4th. Thank you for joining us, Heather.
Thank you so much.
It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Kusha Navidar, filling in for Brian today. To end the show today, let's take a break from the news and spend a few minutes praising our four-legged companions, specifically our dogs. Tonight's the big finale, the Best in Show contest at the Westminster Dog Show, which I'll note was parodied so brilliantly and warmly by the Christopher Guest crew, including the great Catherine O'Hara in the film Best in Show. But right now, listeners, I've been excited about this all day, and I'm ready to hear from you. We want to hear what your dog deserves a trophy for. Give us a call. Send us a text at 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. Maybe your dog is well-trained, like the ones competing at Madison Square Garden, and deserves recognition for sitting and rolling over and not jumping on everyone they meet. Or maybe your dog just has the biggest heart, or leaps the highest after that frisbee, or buries your shoes the deepest in the backyard, or lets you dress them up in funny hats. I mean, that deserves a medal, right? That's the dog. Is your dog able to chew up a new dog toy in record time? Make up your award and tell us about it. Text or call 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. What makes your dog the best in show? 212-433-9692. And while you're calling in to kick this off, we're joined by Elias Weiss Friedman, a.k.a. The Doggist on Instagram. He's the author of the book, This Dog Will Change Your Life, and host of the YouTube talk show called Dogs with Elias Weiss Friedman. Welcome back to the show, Elias.
Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I am really excited to hear what some of these awards are. I saw that you did your own parody kind of Westminster. You ran their agility contest yourself. I gotta ask, how'd you do? Did you do as well as the dogs?
I think I'm still recovering, a little sore from rolling around, jumping through all the hoops. And I was in there with like 50 kids who are doing the same thing. So it was a pretty crazy experience.
Yeah, I'm sure. The back, the quads, I'm sure it all hurts. The four legs is so much more agile than two. That's what I've always said.
Yeah, it was nowhere near as impressive as the dogs. Also.
Yeah. What about your dog? Elsa is your dog's name, right?
Yes, Elsa. She's a husky mix. I think she would be good at agility. It's just she's not very obedient, at least not that I know of. So she'll have to watch from the sidelines.
What trophy would you give Elsa?
Let's see. Besides number one, Shedder, I would say she's a comedian. She makes us laugh every day, all day, and she's also I would say she gets the trophy for most gorgeous eyes. She's got these striking blue eyes that everyone talks about.
Oh wow. What does she do that is comedic? Like, tell me more about that.
Well, I think she doesn't let my wife and I like cuddle at all without her intervening.
Oh, sure.
You know, if we're on the couch watching a movie, she's like, "Wait a second, I didn't get the invitation. Move over. That's my spot." Or she'll roll over on her belly to get attention. It's like classic dog things that we can all identify with, but it never gets old, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a caller already. Let's bring him down. We have Ellen in Manhattan. Hey, Ellen, welcome to the show. What would your dog's award be?
My dog's award would be for singing along with Mozart.
Wow.
His name is Ari, and we call it an aria when he sings. But I play the piano, and I play a lot of different things, but there's a particular horn concerto that I've been practicing for a while, and he comes in only on that, and he comes in at specific spots. He knows when he wants to come in, and he sings along, and it's quite beautiful, and a lot of the time, he's in the chord.
Oh, wow.
That I'm playing. And
he's on tune.
He's clearly responding to the music. And if you play a video recording of him and he hears it and he starts singing along again, a lot of times he's singing the same thing. Like he's worked out a part for himself.
Oh, wow. How did you figure this out? Were you playing the piano one day?
Yeah, I was playing piano. He started singing along, and then I noticed that he came in at the same spot every time I was practicing that piece. A particular motif. And then when it comes around twice in that movement. And so he'd sing for a page or two, and then he'd rest. And then when that motif came around again, he came back in.
Wow, that's so
What
amazing.
kind of dog is he?
He's a Great Pyrenees mix. He's giant. He's 117 pounds.
He's vocal.
And he's very vocal. And it's beautiful. He has a very beautiful voice.
Well, Ellen, thank you so much for sharing some beautiful moments of Ari with us. Listeners, we're taking your calls. If you are a dog owner, what award would you give your dog? What do they deserve? Today, we are going to have the big finale of the Best in Show contest at the Westminster Dog Show, and we're hearing from you about your awards for your dogs. Give us a call at 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. So, Elias, for your very popular Instagram account, at the Doggist, which I follow, I love, you meet and interview a lot of New York City dogs and their owners. Do city dogs deserve a medal? I don't know, for walking on sidewalks and sharing dog runs. Like, how would you describe what New York City dogs would deserve for a medal?
Well, I think they all deserve an award. You know, a lot of dogs have the same type of things that they do that make us happier, whether it's celebrating us when we come home, or making us feel less self-conscious about everything we do, because dogs don't see themselves as they see themselves as enough as they are. But things people tell me when I'm walking around, funny anecdotes like they always poop in the crosswalk. Like, why are they deciding that that's the spot? To more like profound things, like someone who was going through cancer and the dog was the one thing that kept her, going to the gym, going out of the house, like maintaining a normal lifestyle. And so the range of rewards we can give our dogs is anything from silly to, remarkable.
Let's go through some texts that we have received. There's some funny ones here. Here's one. My 20-pound terrier deserves a gold medal for sitting on the couch in such a way that she appears to be a middle-aged man in boxer shorts and an undershirt holding a can of beer. So kind of a Homer Simpson's motif I'm getting there from the 20-pound terrier. Thank you so much for that text. Here's another one. My dog once won most eye-catching at a community garden event. He was a husky German Shepherd mix with two different colored eyes, a magic dog named Cole. Well, thanks for sharing that about Cole. Here's another one. My dog would win the award for eating dinner 50 times and looks like it's the first time. She's managed to fool us over and over again. We now have a family group chat to know who has fed her. That, I think a lot of people can relate to. Here's another one. We've got the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde Award, cute to evil in less than 30 seconds. Oh, that's great. I'd be interested to know what kind of dog that is that has that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Mr. Hyde vibe going on. Let's go to some more callers. We've got Kim in Wilmington, North Carolina. Hey, Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. So my dog Juno is a German Shepherd mix, and she sheds like there's no dog. I've had plenty of dogs, and she sheds like nobody's business. Do you remember Pigpen from the Charlie Brown?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Brown and just things falling off of him. That's her. It's just a constant cloud.
a wake of cloud
hair.
everywhere that you're going.
So
Go ahead.
Your vacuum deserves an award, really.
Oh, me and the vacuum. I sweep and vacuum multiple times a day. I'm doing it right now as we speak.
Right. My dog is the same way. Once you are finished vacuuming, it's time to vacuum again.
Exactly.
Kim, thank you so much.
I was just saying to my husband, I could sweep for the rest of my life in one spot, and I would never not see her hair.
And Kim, what's your dog's name one more time?
Juno.
Juno. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Juno. We appreciate it. Let's go to Jordan in Brooklyn. Hey, Jordan, what would your award for your dog be?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
My dog Ziggy's award would be for collecting the most rocks in his mouth at one time. He's currently up to 5 at one time, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
And he looks exactly like a sexy Scooby-Doo, so that's another possible award.
Sexy
Is he a Great
Scooby.
Dane?
Yeah, he's a Great Dane German Shepherd mix.
Wow.
That's wonderful, Jordan. Thank you so much. I wonder what happens with all of those rocks, like 5 at a time. I guess that they have a rock garden maybe outside.
He's a rock star.
Oh, there you go. Tell me this, Elias. What about all the snow that we're dealing with? Maybe there should be a medal for dogs who really love the snow, like the winter versus the Summer Olympic Games.
Yeah, I mean, some of the dogs are better prepared for it than others. My dog has a double layered coat, so she doesn't even need a jacket. This is like her time to shine. When that big snow day, seeing her with all the snow on her coat was just like this majestic creature. And whereas some dogs have short hair, they need all the jackets and booties, and they get cold and shiver otherwise. So, but we're also seeing how often dogs pee realistically around the city because. You walk down the street and it doesn't wash away like it usually does.
Yeah, absolutely. There's artifacts there that we can track. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm wondering for you, how is it going to the Westminster Dog Show? Like, what's that experience like for you? What are you looking forward to today?
I mean, it's incredible seeing, these dogs are exquisite, right? And these people are extremely dedicated to, maintaining these often very obscure breeds. Things that I'd never see on the street typically, Cilium Terriers, Sholo Eats Queentleys, Afghan Hounds. And so it's just incredible seeing the variety of dogs and seeing the origin of, where a lot of our dogs came from. And it's obviously very niche. If you've seen the movie Best in Show, I know it's considered to be a mockumentary, but I've spoken to handlers there, and they say it's more of a documentary.
How about from your perspective? How accurate is the?
I would agree.
The movie? Yeah, you would agree.
It's one of my favorite movies. Rest in peace, Catherine O'Hara.
Yes.
And you go there, and they've captured a lot of it. You know, one of the things that stands out are the outfits, especially, you know, on the female handlers. You know, there's sequins everywhere, and it's like where like there's just this theme. It's a little bit old school, I think. You know, the male handlers, they have like sequins on their tie. It's so that they can stand out but not overshadow the dog. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's unlike anything else. It's very special, and I'm excited to go see Best in Show this evening at Madison Square Garden. I'm glad it's back in the city.
Wonderful. Well, let's go if we can get Emily on line 2 on the line. Emily from Suffolk. Hi, Emily. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Kusha. How are you?
Oh. Hi, Emily. This is my cousin, Emily. Hi, Emily. It's nice. Thanks.
Hey.
Okay, so you want to talk about Tony, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, Tony. So I adopt and foster senior dogs and cats, and Tony's been my dog for the last 5 years, and he would probably win an award for most confused. He's at that senior dog phase where he's always perplexed about everything.
Emily, tell me more about the work that you do volunteering for dogs and cats.
Yeah, so we like to clear the shelters, and we definitely try to take in seniors, especially. They're often overlooked, but they're amazing additions to your family. So I like to take in a lot of the seniors.
Wonderful. Emily, I am a big fan of Tony as well, and I completely agree. Most confused would be the award that he would win, hands down. Thank you so much for calling, Emily. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. We're about to wrap up, Elias, but I was wondering for you, let's go back to the Best in Show contest. Do you have a favorite tonight or something you're looking out for?
Well, of the groups I know, so I've seen the Afghan, the Maltese, the Lhasa Apso, the Old English. Those have been chosen so far. We'll see who get chosen of the other group. I feel like the crowd favorite will be the Old English Sheepdog, the ultimate fluffy dog. So maybe, you know what? The Lhasa Apso will be my choice. They look like walking wigs, if that's a thing.
We'll have to leave it there with all these prize-worthy dogs, but congratulations to the winners. And thank you to the doggist, as Elias Weiss-Friedman is known on Instagram. You can catch him here or on YouTube or with the book, This Dog Will Change Your Life. Thanks, Elias.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Brian Lehrer Weekend. We're back on the radio Monday morning at 10 a.m. In the meantime, follow us on Blue Sky at The Brian Lehrer Show, where there's always a conversation 24/7.